There's a cute little wren house that was hanging at my neighbor's. I have no idea how old this was, but it's designed to use a 1 pound coffee can. Back in the days when a 1 pound coffee can actually held a pound of coffee. That can comes out of there, you can empty it. It just drops right back in there. Very sloppy, loose fit. You put that board back in there. When that's hanging up, then that's like a perch for the bird to come and go. So this is 9 inches long. This piece is 4.5. This piece is 4. And this is 4 1/2 inches in diameter. That is a 1 1/8 inch hole. This would be a great Cub Scout or father and son project, father and daughter project. Super simple to make, and the birds love this thing. There's no telling how long this has been hanging out there, but this plywood roof is falling apart. I'm going to build a new one and use this can again. 1 pound coffee can used to hold a pound of coffee. I'm not sure how old this can is, but it was down to 13 ounces. And a few brands still use a metal can. Most of these now are cardboard, and that's not going to hold up very well. And the crooks have got it down to 10.5 ounces. So I guess one of these days we'll be lucky if we can brew 1 pot of coffee if we buy a can of coffee. Now if you can't find one of these, this would work great. It's a plastic container. It's about the same diameter. Or you can use a peanut butter jar. You can either leave the lid on or drill a hole through it or take the lid off. It'll fit in there. The only thing is, if you use a clear like this, you're going to have to paint that, because I'm told that the birds like their privacy. Whichever container you find available or decide to use, you'll just have to check this dimension here and make sure that it's a fairly snug fit end to end. Close enough. I'm just going to put this together with glue. And because I'm using different items for the house, some are coffee cans, one's a metal can, one's a plastic can. I'm just going to glue one end on so I know for sure they're going to fit. They're all pretty close, but they're not exact. Just let that sit for a minute. Easiest way to make all these is to just make one of them and then use it as a template. I used the pieces from the original birdhouse to trace these out. All these edges have been rounded over so I don't get a splinter and the little bird doesn't get a splinter. On these two I've already glued in both ends, and I know that the coffee can fits in here real well. I'm also using a plastic coffee can and a large peanut butter jar. I want to check the clearance on those before I put the back on the house for those particular houses. And if you're in a hurry and you don't want to chase around looking for a bunch of coffee cans or peanut butter jars, buy a piece of this 4-inch low pressure, no pressure sewer pipe. It fits in there just perfect. Cut it to a 5.5 inch length. And it's almost the same size as that coffee can. Ever so slightly bigger. Works perfect. It's pretty easy to build one of these little houses. You do need to pay attention to a few small details. I would suggest making a template like this, you can trace around on your material. Come in here and mark the center point, and that's where you'll drill your 1 1/8 hole for the wrens. This roof line is at 90 degrees. You need to check that and make sure it is 90 degrees. A line that goes through the center point from the peak to the center point should be at the midpoint of this flat, and it should be at right angles to it. Take your square, make sure that that's so. So 2 1/4 inch radius, or 4 1/2 inch diameter. This roof line is not tangential to that radius. It's 3 inches from the center point to the peak, and 2 1/8 inches to this flat bottom. Looking at the front and back of the original birdhouse, this is sitting on a flat surface. The peaks line up, and both of these surfaces are identical. This is just cheap pine plywood, and it's really not thick enough to have a screw going through this end grain. So I added these blocks of 3/4 inch plywood, and those will go on here like that. There'll be a screw back here, and that will pivot there, and there'll be another screw in the front. These look kind of cute. It'll be interesting to see how long they last. I did not waste any money on these. I used up old materials. 2 of them were made from OSB, 4 from cheap pine plywood. Neither are outdoor materials. The Titebond glue is not an outdoor glue. I used Rust-Oleum water-based metal primer on the wood and some 13-year-old cans of spray paint. I imagine the birds will raise a few families in these before they fall apart. It'll be interesting.